Shalom. Giving all the praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh. Ba'ashim Yahushua, Ba'ashim Rakakwadash. Double honor to the apostles and the elders of the great millstone who rule and teach well. Peace and safety and much blessings to all the occupants pushing the truth out the four corners of the earth. In our truth, sincerity, and diligence, Shalom. And I just want to get into this scripture right here, Isaiah 49:6, because reading is without understanding, well, without the Spirit of the Lord, you would think that this is talking about the Lord is, uh, opening or you will accept heathens, but that's not so. Okay, so because you'll have a plethora of precepts that says, where is that? Let's go to Isaiah. I think it's Isaiah 40. Got Isaiah. Then the Lord is not the author of confusion, neither does he know he contradicts himself. I think Isaiah 40:15. Behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket and are counted as a small dust of the balance. Behold, he taketh up the isles as a very little thing. Okay, so the nations are as a drop of bucket and are counted as a small dust of the balance. So the Lord look at the nations as if they're not anything. And then remember that the scriptures, like the Lord said, he changed not, right? For you sons of Jacob are not consumed, right? Scriptures like even in the New Testament, like they try to use all the time. John 4:22. Ye worship ye know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. And we know that word Jew comes from Judah. So really and truly is it's really supposed to be salvation is of the Israelites, you see? Because in that time the Romans had Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, in captivity. Remember, the northern tribe had already came to the Americas. All right, but they still part of the nation of Israel. That's what the Lord meant when he said, I have sheep that are not of this fold. Okay? You see? You got scriptures whenever in Hebrews, the 8th chapter, it says, 8:8, for finding fault with them, he said, behold, the days come, said the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Right? You have scriptures like this in Revelations, when you going in Revelation 7. All right? Okay? But they'll still try to find ways, okay, and go to scriptures like this. And it's just, come on, man. You if it don't make sense, if it's looking like it's contradicting what everything else is saying, that means you got to get understanding of it. So I'll read it. It says, and he said, it is a light. Matter of fact, let me start at 5. It says, and now said Yahweh, that formed me from the womb to be his servant, to bring Jacob again to him, though Israel be not gathered, which means what? They were scattered, right? Scattered, right? Yet shall I be glorious in the eyes of Yahweh, and my power shall be my strength. And he said, it is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore the preserve of Israel. And I will give thee for a light to the Gentiles, that thou mayest be my salvation until the ends of the earth. And now read that and say, see, it says Jacob, all right. Then it says Israel, right? Then it says Gentiles. No, man. The key thing right here, though Israel be not gathered, right, as a collective, you see, because you had our people that went off and learned the works of the heathens. You see, they always did that. They went learn the works of the heathens and took on the customs of the heathens, and was, marinated in the customs of the heathen and chose those ways, right? This is Psalms 106 and 30, 34. It says, and they did not destroy the nations whom the Lord commanded them, but would mingle among the heathens and learn their works and serve their idols, which were a snare unto them. Okay? So they learned their works and served their idols, man. Became heathens, and a no people. All right? But you see, it says to be a light to the Gentiles, bro. Right? So, but check this out. When you read down, this says Gentiles, right? So right here it says you would read from their perspective. See, to be a light to the Gentiles is opened up to the Gentiles. But when you go down to 22, look what it says. Thus says the Lord Yahweh, behold, I will lift up mine hand to the Gentiles and set up my standard to the people, and they shall bring thy sons in their arms, and thy daughters shall be carried on their shoulders. And the kings shall be thy nursing fathers, and their queens their nursing mothers. They shall bow down to thee with their face towards the earth, and lick up the dust of the feet, and thou shalt know I am Yahweh, for they shall not be ashamed that wait for me. So hold on. Basically, when you read verse 6, from their perspective, it says, "See, the Lord is dealing with Gentiles." But when you read verse 20, when you verse 22, it's talking about these so-called same Gentiles that they think is talking about in verse 6. See, right here in verse 22 is really talking about the other nations, because right here in verse 23, somebody is in servitude, and it's talking about Gentiles in servitude. Now, the Gentiles that it's talking about right here, that's talking about Israelites, man. How do we know? Easy. Let's just go to the NL. Damn. Let's just go to the NLT. Verse 6, right? And he says, I will do more than restore the people of Israel to me. I will make you a light to the Gentiles and will bring my salvation to the ends of the earth. See, it says Gentiles, right? They're talking about, they would think it's talking about the other nations. But let's see what 22 say. This is what the sovereign Lord says. See, I will give a signal to the godless nations. Why doesn't it say Gentiles right there? You see? You see, because this is really talking about the heathens right here, the godless nations, because these other nations don't have the Most High as a power. Okay? And they will carry your little sons back to you in their arms, and bring your daughters on their shoulders. Kings and queens shall serve you and care for all your needs. They will bow to the earth before you and lick the dust from your feet. Now they're not really gonna lick the dust from our feet, but they're gonna be in servitude, right? They're gonna be in that proper order of servitude as handmaids and hand, servants. Okay. So it says godless nations right here, where it says, when in the KJV, Gentiles. But when you go back up here in verse 6, what it says, Gentiles. See, those Gentiles that the Lord said he's going to make a light to, is talking about the nation of Israel. Isaiah 60. This is Isaiah 60 and 1. It says, Arise and shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, the gross darkness the people. This is why they needed that light, right? But the Lord shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee, and the Gentiles shall come to thy light, and the kings to the brightness of thy rising. Lift up thy eyes round about, and see, all they gather themselves together, they come to thee. Thy son shall come from afar, and thy daughter shall be nursed at thy side. Okay? You know? Same thing. Acts what? Well, let's go to Luke. Luke 1 and 68. Look what it says. Blessed be the Lord, power of Israel. He had visited and redeemed his people, right? And had raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David, his people, right? When you read Galatians 4:4, it said, uh, uh, for thou was made under the law, right? He sent forth his only begotten son that was made under the law to redeem them that were under the law. So it's talking about one people right there. Redeem his people. Going to verse 70, it says, as he spake by the mouth of his holy prophets, right? It says, which he have which have been since the world began, that we should be saved from our enemies and from the hand of all that hate us. So this is on the return of Yahweh Shah. He's gonna save us from who? Our enemies. And who are our enemies? Read Psalms the 83rd chapter, right? So who's gonna be in servitude? So who's what's going on here? No, it's just that those Gentiles that he's talking about in Isaiah 49:6, that's talking about Israelites, man. And when you read down to 22, that's talking about heathens. It says you gotta have a spirit to know that. It says to perform the mercies promised to our fathers and to remember his holy covenant, the oath which he swore to our father Abraham, that he will grant unto us that we, being delivered out of the hand of our enemies, might serve him without fear in holiness and righteousness before him all the days of our life. And thou, child, shall be called the prophet of the highest, for thou shalt go before the face of the Lord to prepare his way. Check this out. To give knowledge of salvation unto his people by the remissions of their sins, through the tender mercies of our power, whereby the day spring from on high had visited us, to give light to them that sit in darkness. Still talking about these redeemed people that's going to be redeemed by the Lord, which are the Israelites, and in the shadow of death to guide our feet unto the way of peace. And the child grew and waxed strong in the spirit, and was in the desert till the day of his shewing unto Israel. You see? So to give light to them that sit in the darkness. So that's what it means, right? Them to give light. It says to be a light to the Gentiles, because what? We lost our way, right? They had lost their way, man. Okay? They went off into, other customs. They went off into, other practices and, idolatry. So they was covered in darkness, man. So they needed that light, right? Which is this wisdom and knowledge, man. Right? Which is the word being preached unto them in the spirit of the Lord, just like how it was today. We was in the darkness. We was after the ways of the Gentiles, you know, doing these abominable things. But through that light, right? Through that light, the Lord has what? Pulled us out of darkness. You see? I think there's one in Peter. I want to say it's in Peter. There it is. This is 1 Peter 2:9. But ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that ye should show forth the praises of him who had called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Right? How were we in darkness? By serving other gods, keeping customs of our oppressors, calling ourselves Americans. Like then they were calling themselves Galatians. They were calling themselves Thessalonians. They were calling themselves after the lands that they were in. Right? They were taking on a covering that was not of the Most High. All right? So that's what that light is talking about. Okay? And when you go to, watch this, when you go to, let's go to Isaiah 43:1. This is a cross reference to Isaiah 49:6. But now, thus says Yahweh, that matter of fact, let me get it. Just you know what I'm saying, so I can show you. man. Thought I had it out of here. It's not it. Yeah, like that. People Israel. I guess it's not on this one right here. Guess not. But anyway, I can still get it. It means the same thing. Isaiah 43:1. But thus said Yahweh that created thee, O Jacob, and he that formed thee, O Israel, fear not, for I have redeemed thee. I have called thee by thy name, thou art mine. Okay? So you got all these scriptures that's talking about the nation of Israel being redeemed, and all these other scriptures is talking about how the heathen, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity, right? I said, Isaiah 14. Come on, man. So those Gentiles that it was gonna be that they were gonna be a light to were those Israelites that were going off into different practices, man. Right? That took part in the heathenistic customs, because they were in the darkness. They the ones that needed the light. All right. Think about it. The nations didn't have no God. You know, well they didn't have Yahweh Bashim Yahshua. They didn't have the righteous ways, right? They wasn't a nation that was, once was, deemed to be the beacon of nations, right? The beacon of the holy people. They wasn't deemed to be that. So how could they ever sit in darkness, man? If they never had the light in the first place. So with that, Lord willing, you are edified. Shalom.